Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing my giant spring book haul. Alright guys, so I have acquired a lot of books over the last few months, so I figured it is time to film a book haul. Now, I still have laryngitis, so we are going to go through these books rather quickly so I don't completely lose my voice. But there is a mix of fantasy romance, dark romance, and contemporary romance, and I am so excited to talk about these books with you guys. Now, if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram, Patreon, and Goodreads, all linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about all the books I've recently acquired. Alright, so starting off with fantasy special editions. So first up, we have Flames of Chaos by Amelia Hutchins. Now, I have actually read this first book. I have not read the second book, Ashes of Chaos, and that is because I think I rated the first book 1.5 stars. However, there is a caveat to that. So I read this first book right after I read ACOTAR, and they are not the same being. I was fresh into fantasy romance. I wasn't used to spicy scenes, so I was just, like, ACOTAR had been the spiciest I had read, and I think when I read this, I hadn't even read ACOTAR yet. Like, I had just read A Court of Mist and Fury, and I thought that was, like, super spicy. So this was next level, and I was just in shock. However, I will be rereading this, because I actually do think I might like it a little more, although I also remember not loving the writing. So I'll see if I can find my original review. Maybe I'll add it here, depending on how cringy it is, because it was one of my...
Flames of Chaos, I will have the picture and the author put somewhere on the screen, but this one was it was the writing. I couldn't get over the writing. It was just, I also said this in another vlog, which I'll link in the cards, but it was like if you read Throne of Glass, Selena Sardathian, if she was like super over-sexualized, like every other sentence she's like cursing or is just, I don't know. And I'm fine with cursing. It was just, I think I found it on like if you enjoyed From Blood and Ash, read this website. And I picked it up and the premise is interesting. It's like these witches that are looking for their sister and there's a bunch of like different paranormal creatures. Honestly, I only got like 3 chapters in and I was like, I can't deal with this. And there's like this dark and brooding like main love interest, but he's also like terrible. And he like, the way he thinks about the main love interest is like so...
It is, because it was one of my first ever videos. But yeah, I'm very interested. I'm very happy they picked this as the special edition because I've been curious and wanting to reread this for years. So I guess it'll finally happen. But anyway, Arcane Society does a fabulous job with special editions. I feel like Arcane and Mystic are my 2 absolute favorites. And I will take the dust jacket off of this book just so you guys can see, because the naked hardback is stunning. So pretty. Look at that. Like literally so gorgeous. So I'm so excited to own these. Hopefully I like them a little bit more the second time around. And next up we have A Soul of Ash and Blood. So here's the thing with this. This is from the Bookish box. And I actually, in another video, said that I will never be ordering from the Bookish box again. Well, it turns out I forgot I ordered this. That is how long it took to get to me. So I stand by, from now on, I will not be ordering from the Bookish box unless the book is just the most gorgeous book I have seen in my life, just because it takes forever for their books to actually get delivered. And I understand that there are issues in terms of like printing and things that are out of their control. It's just that no other book box has the delays like the Bookish box. Like the Bookish box is on another level with their shipping delays. So won't be ordering from them. However, this book, stunning. So pretty. And I love that the edges are poppies. If you're familiar with this series, the main character is named Penelope and they call her Poppy. So I like that nod. But anyway, if you're unfamiliar with A Soul of Ash and Blood, it is the first book from Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, but from the hero's perspective. And honestly, this book in particular made me fall back in love with the romance because I've been feeling kind of not loving the prequel series by Jennifer L. Armentrout, but this book, I loved it so, so much. So I highly recommend, if you haven't read this yet, it came out, I think, last year, but I loved it so, so much. All right, and this next book was a little bit of a bummer for me in particular. So we have A Tempest of Tea. So this was Fairyloot's YA book of the month, I think for either March or April. But here's the thing, I read this when it first released, and I didn't love this book, and I also really loved the original cover, and this cover, I'm just not vibing with nearly as much as the original. I feel like the original was a lot more, it was just more reminiscent of the book. This doesn't really give me the feels of the book. So the book I thought was very similar to Six of Crows. We are following these characters and vampires exist in this world and they are trying to pull off a heist. And this book is insanely character driven and I love character driven books, but this just felt very, very slow to me, especially when it's compared to Six of Crows. So overall, I didn't love this. However, I think that if you want a YA fantasy and that plot sounds interesting to you, definitely give it a try. It has pretty good reviews on Goodreads, so I am definitely in the minority. So give it a try. Personally, I just didn't love it. And next up is another special edition by Fairyloot. However, this one I am very excited about. So this is the Crimson Moth, and it's actually my Patreon book club pick for this month in April. So at the end of the month, we're going to be having a live show where we discuss our thoughts on this book, and I am so excited. Now, I believe this book is also titled Heartless Hunter, so there's two different titles and also two different covers. I believe one's the UK, one's the US. So I love the way they did this book. I also just love the end pages. But this sounded very similar to Serpent and Dove. I believe we're following a witch and a witch hunter, and there is a romance between them. And I think the witch is also a vigilante. So it sounds so, so good. And I will definitely be reading this by the end of the month. And last up for special editions, I have A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. Now, this was also one of my most anticipated releases of 2024. This is an adult fantasy romance. This is the same author that wrote the Bridge Kingdom duology, and I love this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. However, it seems like it's getting very mixed reviews, and I think a lot of that has to do with the pacing. So this book is following Freya, and she is in this loveless marriage. Her husband is horrible, and she ends up having to fight to the death. And while involved in this fight, she ends up accidentally revealing that she has been blessed with a drop of goddess blood, allowing her to have these magical abilities. So now she's being used as a pawn by this group, and the story kind of goes from there. And I said the romance really gave me From Blood and Ash vibes. So once again, I love this. However, the beginning is so unbelievably action-packed, and then there is a big lull in pacing, and then the ending goes back to the action. So I just think the pacing in this is a little off, but overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this book and highly recommend, especially if you like Norse mythology. And moving into fantasy romance, first up we have Shattered Kingdom. So all I know about this is it is an adult fantasy, and in this world there are two kingdoms that are constantly warring with each other, and one of the kingdoms has stolen the prince of the other kingdom, and that's where this book starts off. So I've heard amazing things. My one friend actually told me that she knew I would love this book, which is why I put it on my wish list. And then Carrie from the channel Book for Romance ended up buying it for me when I was really, really sick. So thank you so much, Carrie. This really made my day. But I am very much looking forward to picking this up and plan on reading this in May. All right, guys, I'm going to be a little transparent with you here for a second. So when I am going to talk about a book that I have not read yet, I typically Google it on Goodreads, or I just look up book reviews. So I have an idea about what the book is about. So I'm just not reading the back of the book to you guys. But I just did it with this book, and I went down a TikTok rabbit hole, and I am so intrigued, and I will definitely be reading this book next. Yeah, it is wild. So I actually picked this up at Barnes & Noble on a whim. I have a book shopping vlog. I don't know if it's going to be out before or after this video. But anyway, this is an adult fantasy romance. It's the first book in a series, and it's How Does It Feel? And it is following this woman that is obsessed with a certain mushroom and moth, and she's searching for it and then ends up going through this portal into the Unseelie Court, where the king of the Unseelie Court is horrible, locks her in his cell. Apparently there's a tree involved, and there's things that happen. And then there's also the Seelie Court, and I have so many questions. So I will be reading this next. Most definitely. And yeah, I am so interested. All right, these next two books I can't stop talking about. I keep posting about them on Instagram. I've talked about them in numerous videos, but if you are a fantasy romance fan, you have to read this series. I'd also like to say thank you, my friend Teresa on Instagram. She's my Eagles buddy. She's the first person that told me I had to read this series, and just thank you because it is a new favorite. So we have Spark of the Everflame and Glow of the Everflame. Now I will say Glow of the Everflame was a 5-star read. I love this book. It might be my top book of the year. It's between this and Redeeming Six. I have to figure out which one I like more. But we have to start with Spark of the Everflame because this introduces us to Diem. So in this world, there are descended, and the descended are descended from gods. So they have these incredible abilities, and they pretty much are in charge of the mortals. Now the mortals are not okay with this, and Diem is immortal. And Diem's boyfriend or partner ends up working in this rebel group to try to take down the descended. Now, Diem's mother is a healer, and Diem's mother ends up going missing. So most of this book is Diem trying to figure out what happened to her mother, and in order to do this, she ends up going into the descended lands. And the story goes from there, and it is so good. It is so good. It is the closest I've ever gotten to those Court of Mist and Fury butterflies, that's pretty much why I read fantasy romance, is to get something like that. And that really happened, especially with Glow of the Everflame. I can't wait for the third book to be released via audio. Unfortunately, it's going to be a few months, but I am ready. I honestly might reread this book just because I love it so much. But yeah, if you're a fan of fantasy romance, you have to read this series. Last up for fantasy romance, we have Curse of the Thorn King. So this was my March Patreon book of the month, and it is a Beauty and the Beast reimagining. I really enjoyed it. It had very mixed reviews, but it is a very short read. So we're following this girl who is trying to kill the King of the Fae. However, when she gets there, she realizes the King of the Fae has some unexpected powers she was not expecting. And then she ends up being trapped in the Fae's mansion with him, and it is their romance. And I really liked it. I liked all the nods to Beauty and the Beast, and it was just a really fun time. So if you're looking for a spicy Beauty and the Beast retelling that is very, very well written, highly recommend. All right, moving into dark and contemporary romance. First up, we have Serpentine Valentine, and this is the special edition by Hello Lovely. And as you can see, I actually left it in the plastic. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this edition, only because I actually like the original edition more. So I thoroughly enjoyed this book. This is a dark academia sapphic romance. We're following this girl that has something absolutely unspeakable happen to her, and she is out for revenge. So she wants to get revenge against the head of this university and decides to use her daughter to get revenge. And it is their romance, and I will say, I thought this was going to be very bully forward. It is not at all. There's a little bit of bully, but in the beginning, and like barely any. I really enjoyed this. This is one of my favorite books actually by Gianna Darling. So highly recommend. If you have not read this yet, you need to check it out. And next up is another dark romance. We have The Fabric of Souls. So I believe this is following a 26-year-old girl who ends up being committed to Harlow Sanctum, which is like this very creepy institution. And she ends up getting a roommate who ends up being a guy. And it is their romance. So this was so kindly sent to me from Kija from this channel, Kija Reads Romance. We were supposed to do a readathon together that was put together by Jen from the Book Refuge, the Romance Takeover readathon. It just so happens that happened when I got the flu and strep simultaneously. So I did not take part in that readathon, unfortunately. So that was such a bummer. But thank you so much, Kija, for sending this to me. Literally made my day when I got this. So thank you. And hopefully we'll be able to do a readathon in the future if my voice ever comes back. But anyway, I am so excited to pick this book up. And next up is Malevolent, which is book 1 in the Deviants of Onyx Grove series. This was so kindly sent to me by the author, along with a bunch of other goodies, so thank you so much. This book sounds so good. We're following this girl that ends up, I believe her family was kicked out of Onyx Grove, and now she's back for revenge. So she goes to Onyx Entertainment, and I believe there are these 3 guys that are also kind of trying to figure out their place at Onyx Entertainment, but she's determined to take them down, and I cannot wait to pick this book up. So I plan on reading this. I'm actually going to start this over spring break. I don't know if I'll finish it, but I am very curious to see how I like this book. So this will definitely be a book I read in April. And next up are 2 books that were sent to me by the author, Morgan Page. So first up, we have Love You From Afar, and this is following a girl that is in a committed relationship, but then she ends up going away with the guy's brother, and then things start to heat up. I heard it's very, very angsty, and it just sounds like something I will absolutely adore. Now, this second book, I honestly haven't looked into, only because I don't want it to ruin the first book, although I do believe you can read the second book as a standalone. I didn't want the first book ruined for me, so I haven't even looked at the back of this book, but I know it's going to be really good. I'm pretty sure Cheyenne from That Tall Book Girl read the first book. I haven't watched a wrap-up yet, but I saw it on the thumbnail, so I'm probably going to go and watch that. But yeah, I am very excited about both of these, so thank you so much, Morgan, for sending me these copies. And next up, we have Priest by Sierra Simone. Now, I've talked about this in other videos. Sierra Simone and me, we don't always get along. Don't love her writing. However, I read this right after reading the Priest romance by Pam Godwin, and I hated this. And I think it's because I read them back to back. So I want to read this now it's been a while since I read that other book, to see if I still dislike it as much, or if it was just the timing of when I read this. But this is a romance following Tyler, and he is this priest that ended up, I think, becoming a priest because of something very upsetting that happened to him, and he's been pretty good, stayed in the straight and narrow. That is until Poppy shows up at his confessional and things get spicy. So we'll see how I feel about this, but I do plan on reading this in May. And next up we have Deviant Kings by Rena Kent. This book has been on my TBR forever, and when I was doing that book shopping vlog, I ended up going to a used bookstore by my house, and they had this pretty much new for like $2. So I picked it up, but this is following a girl, I believe it's a bully romance, and she has a really rough life. She's looking for a fresh start, so she gets accepted to this very prestigious elite university, and when she gets there, the guy that's like ruling the school decides he absolutely hates her. And I'm assuming it's going to be their romance. Now, I don't love bully romances, however, I still really want to give this a shot, so we will see. I do plan on reading this probably at the end of April, but possibly beginning of May. And next up, we have Arranged by R.K. Lilley. This is an arranged marriage romance, unlike any other arranged marriage romance that I have read. We are following this girl who I believe is 18, and she's an aspiring model. She's completely alone in the world, so she decides to put her name in this book of very rich men who need wives, and they get to like look through this book and like pick a wife. So she ends up being selected by this very attractive, I'm pretty sure he's in his late 20s, early 30s, millionaire, and it is their romance. And let me tell you, he puts her through it. I did not think the hero in this was going to get redeemed because he treats her terribly for the first 3/4 of this book. However, once he realizes that he actually loves her, it's so good, and I love the amount of groveling he has to do. So, highly recommend. Well, actually, I don't. I lied. So, I enjoyed this book, however, I can definitely see how people will have issues with it, so not sure if I recommend. Check trigger warnings, and like I said, just know that the guy is a complete horrible person for the first half of this book, but I swear, I really enjoyed it. So, I liked it, maybe give it a try, maybe not. And next up is Him. So I also bought this during that book shopping vlog. This is an MM hockey romance, and all I know about this is it has amazing reviews, and my friends all absolutely love it. So I think I'm gonna do a hockey romance vlog just because I haven't read very much hockey romance, and I know it was super popular earlier this year, and I want to give it a try. So I know there's a Wide Shoes hockey romance that's floating around. I think it's like Pucking Around, and then maybe I'll read this, and then I'm gonna need one more. Maybe I'll read Icebreaker. We'll see. But anyway, just an idea, and I'm very excited to pick this up. And next up, we have Always Only You by Chloe Leese. So at first, I was very upset when I heard that Chloe Leese was changing her covers. However, these are gorgeous. These are so stinking pretty. I love them, and I just love the character art. So this is the second book in the Bergman Brothers series. All of the books have either disability or chronic illness representation. They are all amazing. I still have to read the most recent book, but this one is my favorite by far. It has autism rep, and it's just such a beautiful story. So you can read all of them as standalones, but read the entire series. The entire series is phenomenal, and I love it so much. So of course, when I went to Barnes & Noble, I had to pick this book up, despite the fact that I already own it in the original cover, but I needed my characters. But anyway, definitely check out the Bergman Brothers series if you haven't yet. And last up, did I buy the entire Boys of Gentlemen series in the new covers? I did. So yes, I own them in the People covers, and yes, I own them in the special edition, and now I own them in this edition because it's also gorgeous, and I love this series with all of my heart, and I will buy pretty much any edition I can get my hands on. So I'm okay with saying that this series is so incredibly good, and it's unlike any other series I've ever read. Honestly, I don't read a lot of younger contemporary romance, and this entire series is set in high school. So if you're unfamiliar with the Boys of Gentlemen series, know that it is phenomenal. It will make you cry, but we are following these teenagers, some of them that are going through very upsetting things, living a very, very just upsetting life, and their friends that really help them through it. And it is such a good series. So anyway, I think I've explained enough. I ended up buying all of the new covers, and I also have Taming 7 on pre-order. So hopefully that arrives the day it releases, because I will definitely be listening to the audio the day Taming 7 drops. Alright guys, that is my most recent book haul. Please let me know down in the comments below if you have read any of the books I mentioned. And I'd like to say a special thank you to my Paladin protectors, Amanda, Erin, and Leslie. Thank you guys so much for watching. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. And if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye!